I need a new intro song. Anyways, hey guys, welcome to You'll Probably Agree. Today, we had so many dark subjects. We finally decided to lighten things up, and the topic came to mind with one of my colleagues. How about movies that make us thankful? And then I turned it to grateful because I forgot he said thankful. So we came up with movies that actually make us or affirm me of the value of life. And with me today to talk about all these fun topics is Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat. How are you today, Ian?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me on. I love this idea.
Oh, well, thank you. You can thank Jeff for that. That was his idea. But
Or
usually,
is he?
yeah,
No.
I don't know. He's somewhere. Who knows? Maybe fell into the black hole of the Chicago International Film Festival. But no, I meant that in like in terms of the amount of work. But it's a
Oh yeah.
very good festival. Yes. All
Yes.
right. So please don't take away my accreditations. Anyways, Ian, you came up with your idea for a movie, and that was Stand By Me. And I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid. I'm going to throw up the spoiler banners because, in case no one has ever seen it before, I don't want to ruin it for them, although the movie's like a gazillion years old. But could you tell me why you chose this movie?
Um, they're almost entirely personal reasons. I thought about this after I made my decision. I don't know if it's fair to bring this up because there's going to be people who approach this film and have a completely different experience than mine because no one else is me. But my dad introduced me to this movie when I was, I think, 9, and he really responded to it because he had, close group of friends when he was growing up, and I had a group of 3 friends, so we kind of made this quartet in grade school. So it was relatable. It was like a generational relatability, and it made me grateful for that bond I had with my dad when I was younger. We had a strained relationship, but movies were something we kind of bonded over. It made me grateful for solid writing. I read the Stephen King novella The Body, which this was adapted from by Rob Reiner years later. And it's funny because I remember my dad wanting to instill in me a love of reading, which I hated until I left art school decades later. But he made a deal. He said, "Okay, we'll go see Stand By Me after you read the novella The Body." So he gave me a copy of different seasons, and he made me read during the day. I think it was over the summer, if I remember.
Mhm.
And I was such a slow, stubborn reader that by the time I finished it, it was already out of the theaters. So caught up with it later on cable, and my life was not the same ever since. But even inside the movie, there's messages of gratitude about friendship, about for the fragility of life, and enjoying the people you have here while you have them. Gratitude for youthful adventures, and also gratitude for growing up and trying to pass on a legacy to your own family. Also, in finishing up laboriously, uh, appreciation, a gratitude for a great final line.
Mm.
The end of this movie, I don't remember if the novella ends the same way, but it's Richard Dreyfuss typing on his keyboard. He's the Stephen King stand-in who's writing about his childhood experiences. And he said, "Later on, I never had friends like I did when I was 12.
Mm.
Jesus, does anybody?" And it's just so perfect. And then, Benny King's Stand By Me kicks in, and it's just kids are like playing outside with their towels, getting ready to go to the pool. Oh,
Yeah.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was watching this movie or rewatching it, and that was the thing that like really hit me in the end is like because I'm going, okay, I get this is a nostalgia film and this is a period piece, but I'm like, how is this different? And well, first off, I could tell that a lot of movies have copied what it's done ever since, especially Stephen King's own work with it, and then you see it on the big screen, and it's just like, oh, this is Stand By Me, but without without the heart. It's like a horror version, which, if they really followed the novel, I guess they wouldn't know about the galactic space aliens and space turtles that are trying to defend us and all that.
And the,
But
and the children getting into some very illicit activities out in those woods. I
yeah,
still have trouble thinking about
yeah.
that scene. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like I don't even know how like sketch writers could get into that one because I mean, I know like the funniest thing is like Stephen King like wrote, everyone, all these kids are dying in this book, but everyone's obsessing over this sex scene, and I'm like, oh, dude, like how do I approach how wrong that statement is in a million ways? Like that is not helping your arguments. But yeah, this movie, when you get to that final like scene where Richard Dreyfuss says, I've never had friends like I did when I was young, and God, who has? It's like Jesus, like yeah, that resonated with me because, I remember like when I went through school, I had trouble fitting in, blah blah blah. I ended up like reaching a certain social level where I kind of got over a lot of my like kind of anxieties, but I never forgot about those friends I had when I was a kid, and how close we were and how they made me feel included, and how they were special to me. And I think around that time we saw Stand By Me, and I just remember as a kid, like at that time, I was like, "Oh, is it a gay film where they getting each other's underwear in front of each other?" Because at the time, yeah,
That's a way to look to describe part of the movie. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which I've kind of evolved since that. But anyways, long story short, yeah, it's really well done, and you could tell it's from Stephen King because although it's about kids and all that, they don't act like regular kids, like they're vulgar, like real kids are. They're you know, they're just kind of behave not the way like all kids do, and they got problems. They're like individuals. You have Corey Feldman's character. Hang on, I got all their names here. Teddy, who is like going through really bad personal problems relating to his family's mental health. You have Chris Chambers, who's like the voice of reason, although he has this whole sort of like negative outlook regarding like his family throughout this tight knit, like real, like crappy community. And then you have Gordy, who originally wasn't going to be like the main character. And then basically, when Rob Reiner was given the material, he said, okay, like this is a mess. You need to make it about this one character, and thank God they did, because when you get Richard Dreyfuss reminiscing about his friends, it just got me thinking about my friends and my childhood, and it didn't feel like it was a bunch of like nostalgia crap bait that you get like with stuff like this. Like for example, Stranger Things season one, great, got the idea. I all the other seasons completely forgettable because it's just the same thing. It's like it could just be a freaking video game, to be honest, because that's what it kind of turns into. But yeah,
Well, I mean, I think
cool show.
something that Stranger Things doesn't have that Stephen King's work, certainly his earlier stuff has, is a sense of authenticity.
Hmm.
Because I mean, the Stranger Things creators, if they were alive in the '80s, they were barely alive. I mean, these are clearly
Hmm.
'90s kids writing about the 1980s, and that's not to say you can't do that, but there's a difference between it's a phrase I hate, but lived experience versus
Mm.
trying to map your own understanding of a generation onto it to create art. Can be done, but not in the case of Stranger Things. I didn't watch past. I think I watched one episode into season two. I'm like, this. I'd just rather go watch
Yeah.
Stand by Me. It's the real thing.
Yeah, yeah, because the Stranger Things is just about, hey, remember it's like literally like a member berries kind of movie, and there's nothing memorable about that after a certain point. Because once you get over the fact that, because you at first you're like, oh, this is like a sweet kids thing, but then it gets into like horror territory, and it works for like a movie, but man, after that, it's just the same recycled plot, and that's what I hated about it. And yeah, it did not feel authentic or complex. It didn't have the sort of layers that you have between these four boys, which like most movies is like, oh look, cute kids, and this movie is like, oh no, here they all are as people without overindulging in their backstory.
Yeah, and you said something there about like the depth of that nostalgia. it's something that I mean, I've seen this movie over a dozen times in my life, and it's something I didn't get until I was much older. But the talk in the junkyard about Annette Funicello's growth on the Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh my god.
I,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far into it, but um, I think it was Gordy said, I noticed the A and the E are starting to bend around the side, and I did not know what that meant until I was well into my 20s. I'm like, what is he talking about? Oh,
Yeah.
because they have their names written on their sweaters, and she was on the Mickey Mouse Club. Yes, but
Yeah.
it's just that kind of like it's not just a pop culture reference that's thrown out. Like, hey, who remembers ET? It's talking about something specific relating to that piece of pop culture nostalgia that people would discuss back in that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and this movie actually feels like you're in that time period in which it takes place in, and it doesn't kind of feel phoned in. And yeah, the greatest the funniest thing is I'm watching this movie and I'm like, man, like I don't think you could make this today. A, because of some of the language that's used, which was normal at that time, and B, because a lot of audiences would be going, wait, where's their parents? Why did they disappear for like 2 days? Who's looking after them? Why isn't that town calling for them? But it's like at the time, I think maybe that was just normal where kids would just leave for a while. And yeah, it's sorts the usage of the song Stand By Me in the movie was, a lot better than Bodies, because that would have sounded like it was like a horror thing, which, obviously this wasn't.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of the genius of Stephen King is that you have a story called The Body. So you go in expecting these four kids in this town in the 1950s. Maybe it's going to turn into an it situation, but just
Mhm,
it's this beautiful story about coming of age, about them growing in their own bodies. I mean, you can get pretentious as all hell into it, but it's
mhm,
kind of like The Life of Chuck, which
mhm,
Mike Flanagan adapted earlier this year. It starts off as this crazy horror movie
mhm,
with a lot of bizarre coincidences and things happening, and then by the end you realize what it's really all about, big picture, and like this is a beautiful story. Stephen King is known for his horror and his shock value,
mhm,
but I really like the stuff he's written, as Richard Bachman, his more
mhm.
personal stories. He's a hell of a writer, and I've been reading a lot of him this year to prepare for the slew of adaptations. And aside from Life of Chuck, that no filmmaker has gotten him right this year.
Mm,
But Rob
mm.
Reiner definitely got to the core of what King was. And back in the 80s, King was king.
Yeah.
Everything he wrote, it seemed like, especially the horror show, was being adapted. Salem's Lot, Christine,
Mhm.
Cujo, all of that. And then here comes Stand By Me. And I can just imagine that trailer voice guy from the mind of Stephen King. But
Yeah.
no, it's Stand By Me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine, like I wonder how it did financially at the time when it came out, because I don't know if it was, like, a big hit or not. I think it was, like, maybe something that grew a life afterwards, because I'm gonna guess audiences were thinking, "Oh, it's gonna be a horror thing," and no, instead it's like this sweet kids film. But the, real horror is kind of, all the underlying issues, that they have. Like, this is like one of the few movies where, the parental issues actually feels genuine. It doesn't just feel like, oh, my dad drank and he beat me, or my dad was neglectful. Like, they never talk about the dad really in particular, other than he doesn't think he loves him because something happened in his life, would have caused that. But it gets really deep into the roots of those characters without having to overindulge in it. That really kind of makes it relatable.
Well, I mean, it's you can think about it and draw a lot of meaning out of the few scenes with Gordy and his parents, because his older brother Denny, played by John Cusack, and what essentially is a glorified cameo. He's got two very brief scenes,
Hmm.
very touching scenes, complete with the golden tint of the kind of the Barbara Walters nostalgia filter.
Yeah.
But he was killed in a Jeep accident, and so Gordy is left being at home with parents who literally are grieving and also don't understand their son, because
Yeah.
Denny was the all-star athlete. I think he was probably going to the military or something like that. He was definitely on that track, and the parents, these are people who were children of the Depression, likely, so they understood hard work, sports, kind of
Mhm.
getting grit under your fingernails, and then they have this younger kid who wants to be a writer, you know,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and Denny believes in Gordy and wants to read his short stories and is really kind of his biggest fan. And then once that's gone, Gordy has nothing left except his other friends who similarly don't understand him, except kind of for Chris Chambers. And he's the kid that nobody in town likes because he's got a reputation because of his lousy family. So you're right. They don't dwell on this, but if you watch the movie a couple of times, and especially if you read the novella, you realize how much is going on underneath the surface, and just also how masterful these child actors were. There's a reason, aside from poor River Phoenix, but that they went on to have pretty stellar careers.
Yeah, well, the thing is that the whole movie, yeah, it's really kind of centered around one character because the way that Rob Reiner makes it about Gordy, like all of everyone's issues are sort of like interwoven within his character, which is what really kind of gives it a chef's kiss. I'm not sure what the movie would have been like if it was straight up like the novel, but I know when they showed Stephen King it, he actually had to like leave the room and compose himself, and then he came back and said like this is like the greatest thing anyone's ever adapted of my work. So obviously that's high praise, and he still sort of holds it. Maybe does he hold as high as that accolade now? I'm not sure, but I mean, it is like I really like his work, like Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile, and he's done some stuff that isn't just the horror genre, but at the same time it's actually genuinely moving because it is so complicated, and it's not just the simplified kind of stuff that other writers copy off of him. And yeah, that's the reason why he is the author that he is, and has published so many books that are like beyond anything, because he does volume, but they're also really good. He's not just overproducing crap, which
Well,
I can't say for a lot of other artists.
I've not read his, because it seems like, I mean, he's older now, so maybe his writing to get everything out before he passes on. But I mean, he
Yeah,
comes out with seems like one or two books a year, and they're door stoppers. So I'm
yeah.
not as familiar with his newer work as I am with his older stuff. But um, his short story collection, If It Bleeds, from a few years ago, I think this one had Life of Chuck in it, and that was a beautiful uh story tucked in amongst some other pretty chilling stories. I don't even think it's the best one in that book, but they're all bangers, long form or short form. He's great. The one thing I'll say about Gratitude is being a parent now, and being a
Mhm,
parent now, it made me realize just how lucky I was to come up in the 1980s when you
mhm,
still had sleepovers and
mhm.
get-togethers with friends where you're not, you know, my oldest now, he has virtual friendships. He
Yeah.
goes to school with people, but like his friends that he plays with now are all like online,
Mhm,
talking into headsets. I mean, he's got kind of a social life and everything, and it's cool, but it's just strange that there's not that face to face kind of like, hey, let's have people over and make pizzas and stay up all night watching horror movies like I did, and a lot of people in my generation did.
mhm.
And that's not, I don't think, a shortcoming of as me as a parent, like, oh, you're gonna have a sleepover. It's just not what the kids are into nowadays necessarily. So I'm glad I had that experience.
Yeah, that movie, like, the way it transported you to its era, it made me think about whatever era I grew up in, and it didn't matter which one it was. And I grew up, I think, in the like last dying breath of the analog age. Like the way I grew up, there was video games, but we would go to each other's houses and
Yeah.
like we sleep on the ground and then we play them. And yeah, it's like it reminded me of like how I knew all my friends through face-to-face interactions, and luckily, I don't think that like, my like I don't have kids, but I'm very close to my niece and nephew, and it doesn't seem like they kind of have relationships like that where, it's all online, but they are starting to get really obsessed with it,
Hmm.
where they won't put the iPad down at all. And the problem is that our society now, we can't really change that because every activity that we do involves a screen. We go to work, we're checking out screens. We uh, have a social life. We're checking our phones. We are going home, we're watching TV or playing video games. Now we could read a book, but now books are starting to go digital instead of being physical, and hopefully they don't get rid of the actual physical book market. But we live this kind of life now that didn't exist, that we had when we were kids. And yeah, when I'm watching it now, I'm like, wow, I remember a time when we actually went out and touched grass. And not to say kids don't do that today, but not nearly as much. And yeah, most of the time, like when I wanted to play, it wasn't through the iPad. I would have to take toys and use my imagination. And that kind of thing is missing from kids today. And we sound like old men telling people to get off of their front lawn. But at the same time, there's a reason we start to understand why those old men were old men. And
Yeah, I mean, and
yeah.
that's it's kind of a privilege to be here, I think.
Yeah.
I don't mind, and I would not try and explain to a 20-something or a teenager why my experience is better because, the generations are different. But it's like, "Oh my god, you didn't have a phone in your pocket the whole time? You couldn't just look anything up whenever you want?" I'm like, "No, sometimes you just had to wonder or be wrong or say, 'I'll think about that and get back to you next week.' But I gotta go look it up in the
Mhm.
card catalog in the library." So everything's different, and I only wonder. I can't imagine what things are going to be like 40 years from now when my kids are, my age. But they'll have their own journeys too. I do think you're kind of right in that a lot of things are digital now. The key is that you have to make more of an effort to have an analog life.
Mhm.
Like, we like playing Monopoly, the
Mhm.
old physical board game around the table. We like playing card games, taekwondo, like actual physical activities that get people out of the house. But on the other hand, the kids are into video games, and that's cool too. Support what
Yeah.
they're interested in, try and get involved. But yeah, you can't just have like the digital version of the latchkey kids where they're just married to the iPad the entire time. You gotta keep that in check, and it's hard. It really is hard.
Yeah, I think like anything is balance.
Yeah.
You can't have kids play all day. They have to play and then they have to work. And then, they have to maybe play a tiny bit more and go to bed. They have to learn structure.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're just being like, okay, shut up, here's the iPad, which I'm afraid a lot of parents do now because I just see kids staring at it all the time. That's going to be a problem, and they didn't used to have that problem back then. And
Yeah, I mean, we
still,
had
yeah.
television, but that's different because,
Yeah.
it wasn't until I was much older that TV was on 24 hours. I was
Hmm.
on you're kinda like the last of the analog generation. I was
Hmm.
at the last the generation where the TV would, like, go off, turn off at, like, 11 o'clock at night and just be snow.
Wow. Now
Yeah.
yeah. Now that's something that, well, they do that in a lot of horror movies now. Now I'm just thinking of like Poltergeist or something like that.
Mhm.
I wonder if someone had like a ghost come out, from the TV, and you know
Oh,
who
no.
knows? You got now. That's not a new Stephen King idea. That's like an idea that's been done like a million friggin' times to death. But
Yeah.
yet, I mean, when I just think about kind of the depth of it, I think about how there's other coming of age films, but this one feels different. And I think it's because, like you were saying, the cast in the movie, they were kind of just all playing themselves. Like when you look up who these actors were and what happened in their lives, it's like, oh wow, they actually kind of became these people. When you have Will Wheaton, who played Gordy, he was an actor for a little while, but then he left and then he like wrote some autobiography about his life as an actor, and kind of like what happened to him and how it wasn't that great. And you can kind of imagine the rest. He turned it into this New York Times bestseller. Now, obviously, he didn't become Stephen King, but that's because, well, who else? can become Stephen King. That's a hard thing to do. You could have J.K. Rowling, and then, well, anyways, but yeah, but then you got River Phoenix, who's like this person who has a reputation. He's got problems, but he's smart and talented and wonderful. But again, it's like what happened to him in real life kind of like echoes what happens in that movie, because you had that last scene where uh Richard Dreyfuss, as Gordy, as an older man, is saying that, this guy ended up actually leaving the town, but when he became older, uh, he was trying to stop just like a scuffle at a fast food joint, just trying to be the good person that he was, and he got killed, and that's the unfortunate thing about life, is that some people, they wind up where we predict they will, and some people don't. But in the end, it's like when we're kids, before we all kind of separate, and time goes by, we're all kind of part of the same group instead of sort of getting within our own tribes. And yeah, it's beautiful. I haven't seen something as genuine like that in a long time. And, it really is an affirmation about, there is a reason to live. And it's not just because of kids, but because of the families you build when you get older, or the kind of lives you want to lead when you get older. It doesn't just have to be a nuclear family situation. But, with that movie, it's nice, that little note where Richard Dreyfuss ends up playing with, I think, probably his grandkids, and
No, it's just his
he's
kids.
oh, it's just his kids. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was it would be his grandkids now, but this is,
Yeah.
almost 40 years ago. It's hard to think of him as being, a young
Yeah.
man.
He just looked very old in that scene. But then again, it's weird. Like when people say, like, oh yeah, younger generations, they look like old, like when they get older, they look younger. I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see that. I think A, it's because of the style that people dress in, and B, like there is a certain biological thing that happens where people just look younger. Because I'll look at like people and I'm like, oh, that's just a kid. And then I'll look up their age and I'm like, oh my God, and I think people could do the same thing with me. So yeah, it's amazing how it's not just the same old. Oh, cool. Do you remember uh, Ghostbusters? Do you remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? None of that crap that uh, you know I see again and again in movies. It's not Y2K, which is a fun movie, but there is a reason Stand By Me is what it is, and it luckily wasn't overhyped.
Yeah, I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't like Stand By Me. I kind of would like to, just to see
Yeah.
if there's something like a perspective where I can take off my rose-colored glasses, because I
Mhm.
have a deep, abiding love for that film, and sometimes it gets tricky with nostalgia, like how much of this is real versus how much of it is just what it meant to me. But yeah, I'm glad that we're in sync on this one, because yeah, it's a great one to talk about.
Yeah. I guess if you wanted to give it a final rating, what would you give Stand By Me out of 4 Guinnesses?
I'd give it 5 J&B scotches.
Okay. That's a 4 out of 4 from
Yes.
Ian. Yeah. And yeah, for me as well, is a real 4 out of 4. Oh gosh, we didn't even get into Corey Feldman and how Teddy was basically like him. But yeah, it's a very, it's like an uplifting film and also kind of a tragic film. And but it's like that's kind of life. It's like it has its ups and its downs, but I think in the end, if you have a good life, it has its ups. But this next film, it's real special to me, and I'm really gonna spoil it because I'm gonna cut to the ending. But I want you guys to check it out. But this movie was special to me because this was the first movie in my life that made me cry, and it was a very vulnerable and embarrassing moment for me. Because but I remember I was watching it with my family. I was, much, much, much. I was very young back then, and
Mike, how old were you when you watched this? I'm curious.
I think like 12 or 13.
Okay, yeah, that's a heavy movie for that age, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember we got to the ending of that movie, And when we got to that ending, I was like making cookies with my mom, and then I'm like trying to hold back my tears, and then I just kind of start bursting out because I just start thinking about my own family and how much they mean to me. And it's amazing because you have this movie about this guy who has a really hard life, or actually kind of a very good one. But before we get into that, it's like when we get to the end of the film and everyone embraces him, that's I'll just get into it. You have this guy who has a life that many people wouldn't think is that great, but then when you see it through his lens, especially since he's brilliant and is beyond, sort of like probably the more limited lives these other kids would have, you wouldn't think it's spectacular. But it's one of the few films where it's someone who kind of comes out of their own shell and sees the world. And yeah, like by plot and movie coincidence, it is a little kind of like, oh, okay, this is a scene where this is going to happen. It's slightly predictable, but it's also very layered, deep, nuanced, unpredictable, and something that I you could probably make it today, but at the time, it was really kind of taking a strong stance because it's a reaffirming movie about abortion. And when you get to that ending of the film, when Homer sees how beautiful and horrible the world can be, but then his real family comes home and embraces him, it really still hit close to the heart. Like I didn't cry because I was worried to see it for so many years because I didn't want to break down seeing it, but I saw it again and I had like maybe a little bit of misty eye, but I was like, yeah, that's so beautiful. Like there are some moments where I'm like, oh, like I don't think Homer should have just decided to leave out of nowhere with no real like. There's some hidden motivation, but nothing like overt. Like, oh, I'm gonna decide to leave because it's convenient to the plot. But
You mean when he
yeah,
first runs off with Candy and Wally?
yeah, he's
Mhm.
just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna leave, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
But outside of some of those flaws, it was still a beautiful movie. But and it did kind of remind me that yeah, you know what, no matter what happens to my life, I'll always have my family. And you got to hold on to them as long as you can, but you also need to learn how to grow and unattach from them and learn why they are so special to you and learn what kind of life you want to lead. And that's what's so beautiful about it.
It's funny, not to tell
Yeah.
stories out of school, but w- a movie I was going to pick until you kind of made an off the cuff remark of like, we're not going to talk about It's a Wonderful Life. It's been done to death. Because that's my ultimate movie about gratitude.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent film. It's a cliche to say, oh, it's saccharine and everything, but I think it's a really great dark movie with a lot to say. But in a way, Cider House Rules is sort of Homer has the same kind of epiphany that George Bailey does,
Hmm.
where he's kind of stuck in this kind of hard scrabble life. He doesn't seem to mind it. I haven't read the John Irving novel, but Tobey Maguire, I have a feeling that Spider-Man was the best thing that ever happened to him because
Hmm.
he's not that great an actor, especially in this film. He's
Mm-mm.
very much
Mm.
the blank slate vessel who's just kind of like. Do you ever see him on Saturday Night Live where he was impersonating Keanu Reeves on Jeopardy?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Oh.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that is his genuine acting style in this movie, just like reactive and kind of surprised by everything.
Yeah. Just
Maybe
puppy
it's
dog eyes is his whole acting career, to be honest.
right,
Yeah.
but and he gets a chance to go out and kind of see the world, even though it's just another part of Maine, and it have some growing up experiences. How old is he supposed to be in this movie? I didn't catch it.
I think he's, probably like maybe 19 or
Okay.
18, 19. I'm going to guess.
Right. So very sheltered because he is not very worldly in some of the things he asks and the way he talks to people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, he goes back home and realizes that this place I've been trying to escape from is where all the people that really matter to me in my life ultimately are, and I can do good things here. I'll put it up out front because it's probably going to come up, but this movie is a bit of a struggle for me. I only saw it once back in '99 when it first came out. And I didn't,
Hmm.
really think much of it. But watching it now, as I was describing on a podcast back in May, I am 95% pro-life with a 5% allowance for pro-choice.
Yeah.
So watching this, said it was a great movie about abortion. I agree if you agree with abortion. If not, it's a
Hmm.
bit rocky.
Well, yeah, I can understand how that would be a problematic thing if you have a opposite view with the movie, But the thing was, like, as someone who is pro-choice, and I want to make this a life affirmative podcast, not like I'm gonna, a pro-life, pro-choice thing. But as someone who was pro-choice, I saw it and I'm like, yeah, this kind of reminds me that there are people in situations in life where maybe that life won't be great for that kid, but the movie's saying at the same time, because it kind of seems to take a more centered approach, that you know what, someone like Homer or the kid or Fuzzy, or any of those kids, they probably wouldn't have had even the limited life that they had in that foster home. That place really was like home to them, and they still had fulfilling lives. So if they were robbed from that, that would be a tragedy. And but the movie's also saying there's situations where it's like, what happens when you wind up like Delroy Lindo's daughter, who ends up getting raped by her father, and she's gonna have this incest child. Like, are we? Would that, and she has like nowhere to go, and no one's gonna support her. Like, what you kind of go, yeah, maybe that would be the best thing for her, to get rid of the kid, but at the same time, maybe that kid could wind up in that orphanage, and instead of getting rid of the kid, they could have kept it and it could have had a good life there. But we
Yeah,
we
I mean,
don't
it's
know.
a tough choice, and I am sympathetic. It's an issue that I've wrestled with my entire life, and I'm not trying to say that I don't think people should have bodily autonomy and everything. It's just that I come down the stance that it is, you know, snuffing out a human life, and there's the semantics of it. Well, is it a human life? Well, it's not a goldfish. And to that point that you just kind of raised, Mike, is like there are people who have been brought into this world in much worse adverse circumstances with terrible family lives, horrible illnesses, problems with the physical problems, mental problems, and all that stuff, who go on to thrive in spite of those. I'm not going to call them setbacks, but adversities. And the thing is, like, you're right. The movie does present subtle alternatives, but the main thrust of it, because we are talking about Dr. Larch, played by Michael Caine, like he has a couple of like blatant, like, this is basically coming out and saying, this is the pro-abortion movie. Get
Hmm.
on board or get out. And so it's like, yeah, that's fine. But the morals that are presented throughout the movie don't make a good case for why the central premise is anything anyone will get on board with, because you do have the incest situation with the you're trying to set this kind of caste system because it takes place in the mid 40s, right?
Yeah.
The cider house of the title is where Homer goes to get a job after he leaves the orphanage and his kind of medical practice there, or Dr. Larch's, and he's basically rooming with this contingent of black migrant workers, and they're
Hmm.
kind of like downtrodden and all that stuff. But what's the message here?
Hmm.
Because they're also, it's the group of people out of which this rape incest situation comes.
Yeah.
It's not very flattering. And on top of that, Dr. Larch, throughout the entire movie, at every single turn, is lying and cheating people,
Hmm.
whether it's making up a medical degree because he wants Homer to take over his medical practice after he's gone, which, by the way, if he doesn't have a medical degree, how's he going to continue his medical education? Or it comes out at the end that he faked a lifelong physical ailment only to keep Homer out of going to World War II. Now, if this was a Vietnam era
Mhm.
story, maybe, but as we saw in Captain America, and also pretty much every other story you've ever heard about young people in the mid 40s, they were anxious to go off and fight for their country.
Mm.
So, but yeah, Larch is just like lying to people and deceiving people left and right. So I'm like, I don't know who this movie is for or what it's about, but I will concede that it does have a lovely, you strip all that stuff out and you've got this great community orphan story and coming back home message. So it was a real struggle for me. I'm appreciating it more talking to you than I did while I was watching it again.
Well, yeah. Well, here's so a few things about it is that as you were speaking, I was sort of thinking maybe the whole World War II analogy was kind of like a pro-life analogy in where Dr. Larch doesn't want Homer to go off and presumably die because he wants him to live a full life, even if it is within this little institution. Although he is, in a lot of ways, an overbearing, over controlling father who thinks he's doing the loving thing, when like, for instance, he's in the car with Buster and then he like says straight to Buster's face, "Well, nobody wants you, so you're going to live here." It's just like you shouldn't be telling a kid that. Like you shouldn't be taking away their hope. But at the same time it's like I think maybe he's kind of like lived this own rigid life that the movie could get into, but it feels like it doesn't bother with that. It kind of like has the audience kind of figure it out for themselves. But I kind of imagine he was this person who uh he was raised by very strict values and he carries those, but at the same time he was probably smarter and more sympathetic than his parents because the way he treats these kids, and he gives them that famous line at the end before they go to bed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like it shows that he really does love these kids, and maybe he's overprotective of them, and from taking all that life he wants to keep it at the same time. But it's like it's kind of like has those underlying messages. But yeah, what were the two lines where it sounded like this is the pro-abortion movie? Like, what were those two moments? Because I probably missed it.
I mean, I can't quote them to you,
Right.
but it's when I think they had just performed a procedure. It was the girl who'd come in, and it was the back alley situation where she had the thing kind of stuck up in her, and Homer had
Yeah.
said he didn't want to participate in that. There was right around the same time, because Homer has very much been like, I don't want to be part of this and get into it. And Larch is like, well, you want her to go and have some monster, do this to her, or she could come here and we could help her out. They're very close to, you know, they're very close to each other in proximity in terms of the chronology of the movie, like earlier on. Once Homer leaves the cider house or leaves for the cider house, the movie becomes less and less about that.
Hmm.
But the implication is that he's going to come back to the practice and carry on in Larch's, legacy. But
Hmm.
they don't actually address that. Like, is he going to say, "Well, we're closing up shop for this," or "Hey, we still have this medical facility here," because it's not clear what else they do in that suite. On top of that, uh, that does come up a number of times in dialogue. The nurses, one of whom is sleeping with Larch, which, if you want to talk about, a proto Me Too problem there, she's like, a couple of them bring up a couple of times, yeah, we're doing something here that is explicitly against the law. And also, yeah, I'm sorry, it's all coming back to me now, to quote Celine Dion, during that whole sham hearing where Larch is being threatened with having the board is going to come and replace him at his
Hmm.
own practice. He's like, well, I've got to get, someone in front of these people that I can sell them on. And that's Homer. So I'm going to make up these fake credentials. And they're probably going to get some Christian lady in here who doesn't agree with what we're doing in terms of, helping these women.
Mm.
So yeah, it is all over the movie. It's more front loaded, especially that girl who comes in after the Bratz procedure, but then it keeps popping up in little bits of conversation throughout.
I'd say, yeah, I'd say, yeah. I mean, see, for me, I didn't feel like it was really taking a stance on abortion, but at the same time, it is kind of I had this very dark joke in my head when you were talking about it. I was like, what if the final scene was just like Toby Maguire giving an abortion, and then they just like cut to like a slow dolly shot out of like, you know, the hallway, and they're playing the sweet music like do 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 do.
Take me out
But
to the fire pit. That's the
yeah,
other thing is like there's these morbid scenes of them going out to this like bricked up oven in the backyard to dispose of the remains. It's like,
yeah.
okay, that's here we are.
Well, it shows you a very dark side of things, you know,
Hmm.
right from the start of the movie, but it has like this very sentimental kind of very like the 90s had that kind of music in movies where it was like comedies were nice or orchestral, and it was nice before everyone decided to just put in a bunch of digital slop in movies, which I like some of it. Like I like some of Hans Zimmer's stuff. I like Ludwig Göransson. Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. I mean, it was funny. I'm like, I'm listening to the music from Tenants, and I'm like, this soundtrack is awesome, but the movie sucks. But
I gotta get back there. Tenet
yeah,
was such a weird time because that was like one of the first COVID movies. So I
yeah,
think I was distracted for most of that runtime by the fact that I was like, why am I wearing this thing?
yeah.
But as far as like making sense of the rest of the film, I couldn't explain it if you held me over a fire pit.
Well,
But
yeah, my main problem with it is that it's a and this will be a short rant, but it's a movie that is intentionally convoluted for a very simple plot. Because a very simple plot is a Russian bad guy wants to blow up the world, but it's like, but it happens in time, and then we stop him in the future, but that doesn't happen in the past, and we don't know. And it's just like you could tell Christopher Nolan's like, I know how to do time, so I'll just make this in there. I'm brilliant. Fuck you. And then that was the movie.
yeah, what was that Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt one that came out? It was a
Oh,
little bit before that.
I saw that when I lived in LA. I remember that. Looper?
Looper, yeah, I
Yeah.
was a big fan of Looper, mostly because of that diner scene
Yeah.
where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is trying to, explain to Bruce Willis or vice versa, like, how the whole thing works, and he's like, "Don't even bother. If we get into this, we're gonna be sitting here for 3 hours talking about straws."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Ryan Johnson, he's a really smart writer. Man, if he just had a little more time with Last Jedi, I would have liked it for all the same reasons everyone else does.
Hey,
But yeah,
I'll folks, get your pitchforks out. I am a Last Jedi defender to the last.
I know
I
every
think
critic is.
my But I mean, I think the big failing of Last Jedi, and I'll keep this short as well.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for Last Jedi. Does that count? I
Yeah.
think the problem with Last Jedi is not Last Jedi. It's the fact that it was not allowed to be concluded with the third movie because Abrams
Yeah.
stepped back and he's like, Ryan Johnson ruined where do we go from here? Well, you could go anywhere because he left quite an open playing field with
Mhm.
some great ideas for you, but they botched it. And so it's like, oh, Last Jedi is terrible. It's because, it didn't ruin Star Wars. That was the third movie.
And that I actually agree with. I think, like, if maybe not him, but someone else, or okay, now let me back up. If they gave him time to make the second one without like some of the flaws that he put in, it would have really paid off. And then if he was able to have the time to make a movie after that with a concluding act, they could have gone places. But yeah, we got The Rise of Skywalker, which was just vomit on the screen. Oh yeah, you got me into that one. That was like my first like press screening. I just remember that. Or what are the first like press screenings pre like official critic
Really?
accreditation. Yeah, yeah, I remember
Wow.
that. I remember it was a dual screening that day. It was The Rise of Skywalker, and then right after that was Cats. And I think yeah, I couldn't we did a whole episode on that. They got like a ton of listens actually on cats. I know you're a defender of cats, so
No, not a defender, sir, a lover of cats.
that's right. That's right. And yeah, I think the title of the episode was an existential discussion about cats. But yeah, anyways, we went from abortion to Last Jedi to cats.
But
But
we
yeah.
did stop at Rise of Skywalker, which does count as an
Yeah.
abortion. Yeah.
Yes. It kind of is. But yeah, though the movie, like, it has all these dark elements, but it has this sweet tone to it, and it actually lands. Like, it's a little sticky or rocky, I should say. Like, especially when Tobey Maguire just randomly decides to leave, was just like a big wow. Like, they didn't like establish, like, if they just had a few more scenes where he's looking out the window, or he's going through like some kind of picture book, or he goes, "Why are we seeing King Kong every day?" Like, that would have maybe solidified that scene a little more. Because although that ending is sweet, it's like there's just so many moments that just come up way too fast, and it doesn't allow things to sink in. Although I do like the fact that this is one of the few movies where the second act like keeps me engaged throughout it, and it doesn't feel like it's just dragging along, because you have Michael Caine, who's this very complicated character. He's a loving father in a lot of ways, but he also wants to overprotect his kids, to the point where a lot of fathers want their kid to just do one thing in life, when really they should have their own lives. But Tobey Maguire kind of has a very sped up version of it, but structurally the movie doesn't feel sped up like that. And yeah, I mean, you go from people burying little kids in the beginning, to little kids burying kids, I should say, in the beginning, to people with like rape slash incest situations, and racism, which, and also, yeah, Tobey Maguire, like, not just applying to any random hospital made no sense. But that's another thing. Uh, and then you get to that sweet ending where, yeah, although he was sheltered, and although his father did have problems, he did love him. And that's what really kind of made the movie work. Like, is it a little too over the top? Is it a little too Hollywood? Yeah, yeah. But it also does feel genuinely sweet, and it's not like a message you get in a lot of movies where people come back home and they realize that place is really where they belong, and you do get that with It's a Wonderful Life. And yeah, this movie's an update of It's a Wonderful Life, but, well, It's a Wonderful Life with abortion instead of banking. But
Why couldn't that be on the poster?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
no, I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's also it's uneven. Like, I feel like they could have just had a whole story about what's going on in this orphanage, because we haven't even mentioned the fact that Kieran Culkin
Yeah,
is in
Buster.
this movie playing Buster. The he's probably like supposed to be 12 years old. It's strange. Probably because I just finished reading Lionel Shriver's novel. We Need to Talk About Kevin,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you are familiar with that story, but it's about a teenage school shooter. But
Yes. Oh, yeah.
they're setting this Buster kid up as being like increasingly like ignored, picked
Mhm.
on. He gets that line about, you shouldn't, you're doomed to, you're never going to leave this place, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when Homer leaves, he's like, I don't know if I can't remember if he's whittling or carving an apple. He's just like getting increasingly angry. Like, this kid is headed someplace dark. And then
Mm.
the next time we see him is when Homer comes home. It's like, Homer. I'm like, no, there's a whole movie missing there.
They should make that the spinoff of Cider House Rules, but this will be the Stephen King dark version from Stephen King. Yeah, man, they should bring back the trailer voice guy. Well, it would have worked today, but yeah, there's a lot of issues with this movie where you have characters like Dr. Larch, where you're like, is he a good or bad person?
Oh,
You could
no,
have that
I'm gonna
argument.
plant my flag. He's a bad person,
I think,
because
yeah,
again,
okay.
he does look. Even bad people can express love for the things that are precious to them. We call those psychopaths. But if you, I was making notes throughout this, because again, I didn't remember this movie, but it's almost comical. Like, at every turn where he is given a choice to do the right thing, he does the wrong thing. Down to the little kid, Fuzzy, who, in the oxygen bubble, who dies while he's watching King Kong. when he buries him out in the back, he tells Buster, like, if anybody asks,
Yeah.
he was adopted. I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
Yeah. I didn't understand why he told him that. When he's like, just tell him he's adopted. Like, why? Do you like fucking like did you do what they did of End of Days where he like lifts the oxygen tank and breathes nicotine into there? Like
You're giving me a smoker's cough.
yeah.
But no, it's just it's amazing because from the fake credentials to setting up Homer as being his replacement, even though he's never been in medical school, to the abortion thing aside, like there's like 5 examples at least in this movie of him deceiving people, or plus he's an ether addict and all this other stuff. Like I don't know what's going on with this character. On top of that, his biggest crime is a meta crime because Michael Caine, just let him be British. This horrible New England accent that he tries to affect, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Good night, ye kings of England. Like what? Wait, what the fuck was that? Like, and then he
Oh,
got an Oscar for it. Yeah.
did he get an Oscar for this movie?
Yeah. 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 So that was his Academy Award. It's like, yeah, that movie was focused around this. Again, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he just like holds things that are precious to him, but I think he's just trying to give good lives to people where
But
maybe
again,
he wasn't.
but
Yeah.
it's a controlling thing. Like it's not
Yeah.
his place to keep Homer from going to the war,
No.
right? I mean,
No.
he's basically controlling and manipulating this environment. This orphanage slash medical practice he's got set up is his own little fiefdom. He's indignant when Homer suggests, in this letter, there's a comical exchange where he and Homer are writing letters back and forth and they're doing the voiceover. And at one
Yeah.
point, the voices almost start stepping over each other. Like, I'm not coming back. What do you mean you're not coming back? I'm like, what kind of letter is this? But
Oh
it's
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
yeah, it's
remember.
just
Yeah.
when you're dealing with this character, if let's just say who is an actor who plays a real asshole, a villain, like when you see him in a movie, you're like, I can't stand this person by looking at him.
I'm just gonna say J.K. Simmons because he's in this movie where oh wait, was yeah, he that this was this movie, yeah. And he it was weird. He's like the father character and has like no dialogue in this movie.
Well, that's
And this
because
was
he was 2 years off of Oz, so this is
that's what I
before
was
he's
about to
J.K.
say.
Simmons, right? But
Because I was
okay,
about
so
to say, like, what if like his dialogue was on in one scene, he just says something anti-Semitic, and then like
but this is a good example. Okay, imagine if J.K. Simmons, in his all of his Ozness, was playing Dr. Larch. Don't change anything in the script. Just imagine that guy playing that role. Would you still feel the same way about him?
Oh god, no. But that's why they got Michael Caine because he's
Right.
a very
To
sweet
give him the
personality.
veneer of respectability and warmth, even though everything he does, it's almost like a misdirect to cover
Yeah.
up for the fact that he's doing a lot of unsavory things in this movie. Again, even no matter how you feel about the whole abortion thing, you can take that out. Um, yeah. Oh, the other thing, it's weird because Stand By Me and Cider House Rules have a weird connection. Did you
Mm.
notice? I wrote it down. It's in my notebook. It's the train that pulls in is Bangor and Astudamore or something like that. So this
Mm.
takes place in Maine, and Stephen King is constantly writing about Bangor, Maine, and Castle Rock and Derry. Those are like the main places in his novel. So this maybe this
Yeah.
takes place during the first like It incursion or something like right around that time.
You're gonna just see like Homer like wind up in Welcome to Derry in one episode, and like the demon baby gives like birth to a demon baby, to like the main girl on the show, and Tobey Maguire's gonna come out as Homer de-aged, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, I know a place where I can save you." But, oh man, we have some
I
dark
want
humor tonight.
I want nothing more in life than to see that.
Yeah. That'll be like what the new Marvel like de-aging thing will be. Well, just like me bringing people from like obscure movies, in the 90s. Because, yeah, man, this movie came out in 99. And I kind of miss simplified old Hollywood movies like this. Like, yeah, there's a lot of complexities to it. And the movie just kind of hones it down and simplifies it to a simple note. But there's like something that was genuinely sweet about that time that comes across in this film that I don't see in a lot of other movies. A lot of other movies just fake it or Stranger Things it. And this one, it does have this kind of sweetness to it, which although simple, it's like kind of like a Capricorn movie. And it's a good nod to to Frank Capra's work, as especially to Wonderful Life. Uh, and it doesn't feel like too many of the other derivatives, which doesn't really know how to kind of make itself stand out. And this one does kind of stand out over the years, especially in my youth with Charlize Theron. But yeah.
That Lasse Hallström, who directed this movie, you
Yeah.
can tell he had a thing for Charlize Theron. I mean, who didn't, especially back in
Yeah.
'99? Because there's that one shot of her laying across the bed.
Yeah.
I mean,
The ass shot. Yeah.
it looked airbrushed, and he like comes
Yeah.
back for a couple of times, like
I wonder what all the takes were like. Do you think like they kept doing the dolly again and again? Like, oh no, hang on, I must get your ass a little more. I don't know what he sounds like, but yeah.
he sounds exactly like that. I never heard him
Yeah.
speak. That's how he
Yeah.
sounds. No, but you're right. I mean, this is another thing I'm grateful for is coming of age in a time when Oscar movies were also popular movies. They weren't just these like bizarre niche kind of things. We had cultural zeitgeist. Yeah, everyone rolled their eyes like, oh, it's September, October, it's Oscar season. But at least a lot of these movies that when you saw them at the Academy Awards, you knew what the hell they were. And yet there's a good chance that at least half of America knew what they were as well because they'd paid money to go out and see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they were fun. It's like it reminds me of like one movie. I gotta revisit it because I really liked it at the time. I think it was called The Majestic with Jim
Jim
Carrey.
Carrey, yeah, I
Yeah.
never saw that. At least I
Yeah.
don't think maybe I did. If I did, I don't remember it at all, but I feel like I skipped that one, probably as a
Yeah.
mistake.
But that was like Frank Darabont who did that movie, who did Two of Kings,
Yeah, Shawshank, yeah.
yeah, best stuff. Yeah, Shawshank and Green Mile,
Mhm.
which, yeah, I like Green Mile, and Green Mile doesn't feel like Shawshank. It feels, well, a little bit. It feels a little Shawshanky in terms of sentimentality, but it's like genuine, But it's like that movie's really underlooked. And yeah, I remember The Majestic was hated, and then I saw it and I really liked it, but it was so long ago that
Well, maybe we
I
should
might have
talk
a
about
different
it
viewpoint. Yeah.
because I feel like, again, if I saw it, I have no memory of it, but
Yeah.
I feel like it was one of the situations where it came out and you're right, a lot of people kinda ragged on it, so I was like, "Maybe I'm not gonna bother." So yeah, I should give because it's about a movie theater, right?
It's
That's
yeah, it's a
the
guy about
term.
who renovates like an old theater and brings it back and stuff like that. It's about the magic of movies, so
Why aren't we
yeah.
talking about that right now?
Yeah.
We gotta put that on the
Yeah,
calendar.
but it was like one of those kind of like Capricorn life affirming films that, I really enjoyed, but I would love to do an episode on that because I haven't seen it forever, and I wonder if I saw it today, if I'd feel the same way, or if I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, this is some tired old bullshit." You know?
It might take on an entirely different meaning now when the future of movie theater I mean, it's a theme that
Yeah.
keeps coming up, like, every 5 years, whether it's streaming or a pandemic or whatever, but
Yeah.
it still feels like we're kind of on that edge of, like, how long can this last? So,
Yeah.
something about renovating a movie theater and bringing back the magic of movies could be timely as hell.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess Peeves critics just hated it because they're like, "Oh, it's like a crappy cinema paradiso or something like that." But who knows? I don't know. But yeah, if you were to finally rate Homer's Odyssey, no, I'm sorry, this is the Cider House Rules. How many Guinnesses would you give it?
I'm gonna give it straight down the middle of 2 Guinnesses.
Okay, two Guinnesses. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh,
And
that's
that's
the two
one
and a
more than I would
half.
have given it before this conversation. You've really turned me around on some stuff.
Oh, so I made you hate it more?
No,
Oh, no.
no, the
Oh,
opposite, yeah.
oh, good. Okay. This movie has a very special place in my heart, and, yeah, it might also be because it goes with some of my political values, but at the same time, I just feel like it's one of those real movies about the affirmation of life that isn't just nostalgia bait or isn't just trying to force its charm, although it does have some of that old school charm to it. So I hope this is the right one. I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 4. It's not a classic, it's not a 4 out of 4. Uh I I don't know if it'll really make you cry today. But, yeah, it's like, God, and such a long time ago, that movie, and so many up and coming stars. But yeah. But Ian, thank you so much for coming on. You can find all of his stuff on kickingtheseat.com, and the link to his YouTube channel is and more info below. What podcast do you have coming up?
Well, today I just released my first ever trailer reaction, to Scream 7, which was a lot of fun to
Yeah.
do. Um, I've got a show coming up. Sorry, you put me on the spot, so I'm like, "What am I doing?"
Oh, sorry.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't mean to
no,
do
no,
that. Yeah.
next Thursday, gonna be talking about Begonia, the new, Yorgos
Yeah.
Lanthimos movie. Are you talking with, our mutual friend Sujiwa about a film called Casey Makes a Mixtape? That'll be out, early
Oh,
next
yeah.
week. And, yeah, otherwise just, trying to get my act together with regard to this crazy movie calendar as we plunge straight forward into award season.
Oh gosh, yeah, I know. That's already like November is getting booked for me, and with work and everything, I have to hold back.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to this or watching this. If you liked what you saw or listened to, subscribe to YPA Reviews. If you're on TikTok, YPA Reviews Chicago, and the website one more time, ypareviews.com, where you can find also my written stuff for a lot of the latest movies. And I'll let you guys know soon what the next episode will be. But for then,
Wait, wait,
please
wait,
have
wait.
oh
Before you sign off, Mike, sorry to cut you off. I gotta
yeah.
get this in. I am grateful for you.
Oh, well, I'm grateful for you too. I'm grateful for the critic friends that I have, and I'm grateful for all the people in my life who help me develop my craft and help me realize that there are real people out there who care about you. So, thank you, everyone. And I think that's the thing we should take off with at the end. It's about death and sadness, but it's about what makes the things we're grateful about in life so special. So thank you, folks. Have a good one. All right. Maybe we'll do something a little lighter or darker next time. We'll see. Good. Oh wait, that's the wrong button. This is the right button.
Always happens.
I almost hit like leave studio and stream.